You don't carry a weapon. You don't wear a uniform. You park in a lot that looks like every other government lot, and you walk into a building that looks like every other government building. The difference is inside. The difference is what is on the screens. You are 23. You have a Master S degree in political science and a minor in Mandarin. You passed a background investigation that took 14 months and interviewed 11 people who knew you in high school. You have a TSI/TCI clearance. You are now one of approximately 16,000 people in the world allowed to read what you are about to read. Your first morning, your supervisor puts a folder on your desk. Raw intelligence SIGINT human imagery analysis. Things collected by people doing things you will never be told about. Your job is to read it, synthesize it, find the pattern nobody else found. You read for 6 hours straight. You forget to eat lunch. You look up and the office is half empty. You didn't notice anyone leave. You go home. You make pasta. You turn on the news. The anchor is talking about a country you spent 6 hours reading classified material about. He has maybe 12% of the picture. He sounds certain. You say nothing to the television. You eat your pasta. You go to bed. This is the job. You already love it. 3 years in, things now, not a little, a lot. The kind of lot that changes how you watch the news. The kind of lot that makes dinner party conversations feel like a different species of reality. Your friend asks you what you think about the situation in the South China Sea. You say it is complicated. He says, come on, you work for the government. You must know something. You say it is really complicated. He moves on. You spend the rest of dinner thinking about 3 reports you read this week that he will never see. You write your first major assessment, 15 pages, sourced, cavated, careful. You send it up the chain. Your branch chief marks it up. Some of the marks are good catches. Some of them soften things you didn't want softened. You push back on 2, you lose both pushbacks. The assessment goes out with softer language than you wrote. You file this feeling somewhere and move on. You will need more storage for this feeling. You don't know that yet. You are 31. You brief senior officials now. Not the top, not yet, but people close to the top. People who sit in rooms where decisions get made. You learn something in year 5 that nobody told you in school. Intelligence doesn't drive decisions. Decisions drive intelligence. Policymakers come to the table with a conclusion. They want the intelligence to support it. When it doesn't, the intelligence gets questioned. The sourcing gets scrutinized. The analyst gets asked if they're sure. You are sure. You are usually sure. Being sure doesn't always matter. You write a threat assessment in October specific, regional instability, specific actors, specific window. You rate it high confidence. Your division chief reviews it. He says the timing is sensitive. He says, let's be careful about the language. You change 3 sentences. The assessment goes out. The conclusion is the same but quieter. You tell yourself that is fine. The conclusion is still there. Someone will read it. Someone will act on it. You believe this in October. You will believe it differently by March. March comes. The thing you wrote about in October happens. Not similar to what you predicted. Exactly what you predicted. The actors, the window, the method, page 4 of your assessment. Paragraph 3. You watch it on CNN in the office break room. 3 other analysts are watching with you. Nobody says anything. The ticker at the bottom of the screen says developing situation, casualty estimates. Early reports say significant. The final number is 4,000. It takes 2 weeks for that number to settle. You watch it settle in real time from a room with no windows. You wrote it down. You submitted it through proper channels. You followed every protocol. You did everything right. The assessment was read by people authorized to read it. Something happened between the reading and the acting. You don't know exactly what. You will never know exactly what. The system has many rooms and you only have visibility into some of them. You go back to your desk. You have three other active assessments. You open the first one. You start reading. This is the only thing you can do. You start reading. You are 40. You manage 35 analysts now. You review their work. You send it up. You fight for the language when the language matters. You lose some of those fights. You win some. You've learned to pick them. A young analyst comes to you. She is 27, sharp, one of the best you've seen at this level. She has written an assessment that makes people uncomfortable. The sourcing is solid. The logic is clean. The conclusion is inconvenient for three people above you on the org chart. She asks if you'll back it. You read it again. You think about October. You think about page 4, paragraph 3. You think about CNN and a number that took 2 weeks to settle. You say yes. You send it up with your name on the cover. 3 days later, it comes back. Questions about the sourcing, requests for additional caveats. The language suggesting certainty has been flagged. You go back to her, you tell her what needs to change. She looks at you the way you once looked at your branch chief. You don't have a better answer than the one he gave you. You say the conclusion is still there. Someone will read it. She nods. She goes back to her desk. You hope you are right. You were wrong once before. The number was 4,000. You testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. You sit at the long table cameras. Senators with prepared questions, staff whispering in ears. A senator asks if the intelligence community failed to predict a specific event 3 years ago. You give the accurate, careful, classified, appropriate answer. He asks a follow up. You give another answer. He says he is not satisfied with that answer. You say you understand. You give the same answer more slowly. Afterwards, a staffer tells you that went well. You say thank you. You mean nothing by it. You have been in this building for 17 years. You have read things that would change the way most Americans understand the world. You cannot tell them, not because you don't want to, because the information is classified and classification exists for reasons you believe in even when the system frustrates you. You drive home. Your husband asks how your day was. You say long. He says it is always long. You say yeah. He hands you a glass of wine. You sit on the porch. A neighbor waves from across the street. You wave back. She has no idea who you are. That is fine. That is by design. Some nights that feels like purpose. Some nights it just feels like distance. You are 54, Senate, confirmed. Your name was in the news for 2 weeks during the confirmation process. Now it is not in the news again. That is how it should work. You read everything, not because you have to, because you came up reading everything and you don't know how to stop. Your senior staff tells you to trust the summaries. You read the summaries and then you read the underlying material, old habits. On a Wednesday morning, a brief lands in your queue, junior analyst, 26 years old, 2 years in. The brief is flagging a specific threat, regional specific actors, specific window. The sourcing is solid. The logic is clean. The confidence rating is high. You read it twice. You sit back. The conclusion conflicts with the current policy narrative. Three officials above you in the interagency process have publicly stated a different assessment. This brief contradicts them by name, by implication. Sending it forward means a conversation nobody wants to have right now. You think about October, page 4, paragraph 3. You think about the break room, the ticker, the number that took 2 weeks to settle. You think about being 29 years old and writing something true and watching it come back softer. You forward the brief, full confidence rating intact, no softened language. Your cover note says recommend immediate review. You send it to 4 people. One of them will read it carefully, maybe 2, maybe none. You don't know. You never know which room it dies in. You mark it sent. You open the next brief in the queue. 22 years in this building, 17,000 square feet of office space, and not a single exterior window in your primary workspace. You know more about what is actually happening in the world than almost any living person. You have used that knowledge to write things, brief things, fight for things, lose things, win things, and watch things happen anyway. You are going to retire in 8 months. You have been asked to join two think tanks and one university. You will write a book. Parts of it, the parts that can be declassified, which is fewer parts than you'd like. Your deputy asks what you want your legacy to be. You think about it. You say you want it to be the assessments that were right. He asks about the ones that were ignored. You say those too, especially those. He nods. He writes something down. You're not sure it is the kind of thing that helps. You said it anyway because it is true. Right now, somewhere in a government building with no exterior windows, a 23-year-old just got her clearance. A folder landed on her desk, raw intelligence, things collected by people doing things she will never be told about. She has been reading for 4 hours. She forgot to eat lunch. She looks up and the office is half empty. She didn't notice anyone leave. She goes home, she turns on the news. The anchor has about 12% of the picture. He sounds certain. She says nothing to the television. She goes to bed. She is already thinking about the pattern nobody found yet. She thinks she found it. She is going to write it down tomorrow. She doesn't know yet about October. She doesn't know about page 4, paragraph 3. She doesn't know about a break room and a ticker and a number that takes 2 weeks to settle. She doesn't know about language that comes back softer. She doesn't know about the room the brief dies in. She just knows she found something. She just knows she needs to write it down. She is going to write it down. The folder is on the desk. The screens are still on. The cycle continues.